A Grimm Warning, Chapter 4, A Wedding in the Woods. Alex spent the following afternoon on the grand balcony of the fairy palace. She leaned in on the railing and gazed at the beautiful sights around her. Everywhere she looked, she could see fairies of all shapes and sizes, preparing the palace and the gardens for the inaugural ball. Every flower bloomed a little brighter, every pond rippled a bit clearer, and every bird's chirp was a little merrier. The whole kingdom was buzzing with excitement for the ball, except for Alex. A year ago, Alex had wanted nothing more than to live with her grandmother in the land of stories. Just the idea of learning magic and becoming a fairy had seemed like a stretch, but here she was, days away from being introduced to society as a member of the Fairy Council. It was more than she could ever have wished for, more than she would ever have thought possible, and maybe more than she could handle. After defeating Esmia, the evil enchantress, she had proven herself capable of leading the fairy tale world, but perhaps she still hadn't proven it to herself yet. A large shadow eclipsed the balcony, and Alex looked up to see Mother Goose and Lester descending from the sky above. "Hey, kiddo, I've got something for you," Mother Goose called down. Lester landed on the balcony, and Mother Goose dismounted and joined Alex at the railing. "What is it?" Alex asked. She eyed a questionable sack of gold coins Mother Goose was clutching to her side. Mother Goose cautiously looked around the balcony to make sure no one was in earshot. "Now don't tell anyone you heard this from me, but I just ran into some friends of yours in the dwarf forests," she told her. "What were you doing in the dwarf forests?" "I was playing my weekly card game with a few of my gambling buddies, but that's not the point." Mother Goose held the sack of gold coins a little tighter. "I bumped into Jack and Goldilocks. They have some very exciting news to share with me and wanted to pass it along to you." "What is it?" Alex asked eagerly. The last time she saw Jack and Goldilocks had been the night Bob proposed to her mom at the charming palace. She had always wondered what kind of mischief they had been up to since then. "Apparently they're getting married," Mother Goose said. Alex happily clapped her hands. "That's incredible news!" "I guess Jack popped the question while they were in combat with a gaggle of Corner Kingdom soldiers. He said he knew it would make Goldilocks swoon," Mother Goose said. "When are they getting married?" Alex asked. "This evening, just before dusk, in the dwarf forest. Talk about short notice," Mother Goose told her. "They decided it would be best to do it with as little notice as possible. You know how cautious fugitives get about their whereabouts. They asked me to officiate the ceremony and pass along an invitation to you." "Well, that is short notice, but I wouldn't miss it for the world." Alex was suddenly happy that her grandmother was forcing her to take the week off. "But where in the dwarf forests?" "They told me to meet them in the clearing just south of the dwarf mines," Mother Goose said with a shrug and an eye roll. "I don't know why they want to have their wedding there. Maybe all the swamps were booked. Anyways, the guest list is very exclusive. Only a few people know what's even happening, so keep it to yourself, especially around here. You know how judgmental these fairy folks get when any of us try to have a little fun now and then." "How exciting," Alex said. "I can't wait. I think a wedding is just what I need to distract myself from all this ball business." "Tell me about it," Mother Goose said. "I hope I'm still good for it. The last time I officiated a wedding, Puss in Boots drank all my bubbly and started playing a fiddle. A cow convinced everyone he could jump over the moon, and an enchanted dish ran off with a spoon. You know, it's a pretty good party when even the chains get into a little hanky-panky, but I'll tell you more about that another time." Mother Goose hopped aboard Lester, took his reins, and they flew back into the sky. Alex was thankful to have something to think about besides the ball. She left the fairy palace a good hour or two before dusk to meet Cornelius so they would have enough time to travel to the dwarf mines. However, when she went to go meet him in the field just outside the gardens, an even greater distraction was waiting for her. "Hello there," said a smooth voice Alex wasn't expecting. She stopped in her tracks. Across the field near the edge of the stream, she saw Cornelius lying on his back, and Farmer Robinson's son rubbing his belly like a kitten. "What are you doing here?" Alex asked and placed a hand on her wand. She couldn't be too sure what his intentions were. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," the farmer's son said, walking closer to her. The truth was Alex didn't mind it at all, but she was about to let him know that. "How did you find me?" "I didn't. I found your unicorn," he explained. He wasn't hard to pick out. I assumed if I found him, I would eventually see you again. Alex had to assess the situation twice. First, as a fairy, she assumed the boy whom she had recently helped was probably seeking her help again. Second, as a 14-year-old girl, hearing that a cute boy wanted to see her made her blush. Well, here I am. What can I help you with? Alex said collectedly. I don't need help with anything, the farmer's son said. I just wanted to thank you for what you did at our farm. My father hates fairies, especially when they help us out, but I know deep down inside he's grateful too. Alex nodded. You're very welcome. Wait, what's your name? She asked. My name is Rook, he said. Rook Robbins. It's very nice to meet you, Rook, Alex said. And you never have to thank me. Helping people is what we do best. Now, if you'll please excuse me, Cornelius and I have somewhere we need to be. Wait! Rook stepped between her and Cornelius. Before you go, I have something I wanted to ask you. What's that? She asked. Rook looked at his feet and kicked a rock near his foot. The truth is, you're different from any other fairy I've ever met. You're not all sparkles and bubbles, and you aren't afraid to get your hands dirty. I really like you, and I've been thinking about you an awful lot since I saw you at the farm. Alex could feel her heart start to beat a little faster, but she ignored it, not wanting to get her hopes up. Where was he going with this? You can say no, and I would understand, but I was wondering, would you like to take a walk or something with me sometime? Rook said. He was scared to ask the question and terrified to hear her answer. Alex stopped completely. She stopped breathing. She stopped thinking, and she was pretty sure her heart stopped beating. She forgot about everything on her mind. The fairy ball, Jack and Goldilocks' wedding, her name, who she was, where she was, and everything else important. All she could think about was the attractive boy in front of her, his floppy hair, his hazel eyes, and how he wanted to take a walk with her. With every second that Alex stayed quiet, Rook's face fell a little bit more into a frown. That's all right, I understand, Rook said. You're a fairy, and I'm just a farmer's son. Should have known better than even to have asked. He turned around and headed out the field, muttering to himself how stupid he was. No, wait! Alex barely regained control of her senses before it was too late. I would love to go for a walk with you sometime. Rook jerked his whole body back towards her. You would? He said with a goofy grin. Well, that's splendid. The two stood silently for a moment with giddy smiles frozen on their faces. When will you be free? Rook asked. Is tomorrow evening good? Same place, same time? That would be wonderful, Rook said. I'll meet you in this field tomorrow. I'll look forward to it, Alex said. Enjoy the rest of your day. Wait, what's your name? My name is Alex, she said. Alex Bailey. Rook was smiling from ear to ear. Then I'll see you tomorrow, Alex. He jogged out of the forest with a confident jump in his step. Alex finally understood what people meant when they said they had butterflies in their stomach. She felt a jittery, tingling sensation sweep through her whole body, as if 1,000 butterflies were migrating inside of her. A huge smile appeared on her face. Cornelius got to his feet and walked to Alex's side. He blew a gust of air in her face and bared his teeth in a flirty smile. Oh, stop it, Cornelius, Alex said. We're just two people who have decided to go on a walk together, that's all. It's nothing more than that. Cornelius neighed. Alex wasn't fooling anyone, especially herself. This was a much bigger deal than she wanted to admit. Oh my gosh, the wedding. We better get going or I'll be late, she said. It's crazy how fast time goes by when you're... Cornelius batted his eyelashes and sighed, teasing her to no end. No, when you're running late, Alex said. Alex climbed onto Cornelius's back, and the two headed west to the dwarf forest as the sun began to descend. Galloping across the land at Cornelius's magically enhanced pace made the trip go by fairly quickly, and the thoughts percolating in Alex's head made it seem that much faster. After all the tribulation she and her brother had gone through in their young lives, until this moment Alex had never had any headspace to think about boys. She'd always assumed one day she might meet someone and fall in love, but as she got older it never dawned on her that one day could be getting closer. And now she couldn't help but ask herself if that moment had arrived already. Was Alex at the beginning of her own classic love story, or just entering a stage of adulthood? Was she about to experience romance for the first time in her life, or just a mild case of puppy love? Did Alex even want to be invested in someone this early in her life, or should she put all her energy into the fairy training? She couldn't believe how much excitement and mystery one boy had brought into her life so quickly. Was it too early to say she was enjoying this newfound excitement? Would it lead to more exciting experiences? Could Rook Robbins be the love of her life, or would there be other boys in her future? And if there would be others, did that mean Rook would break her heart? Alex knew she of all people needed to protect herself. She had been working too hard to let a silly boy come in and ruin everything she had achieved. She couldn't let him hurt her, distract her from her goals, and most important, if things went askew, she couldn't let him turn her into something or someone she wasn't. She couldn't let anything turn her into Esmea. Since she had caused her head to spin in so many directions, just by asking her to go on a walk, she realized how deeply a bad experience might affect her. The purer the heart, the easier it is to scar. And Alex's heart was as pure as they came. "Alex, get a hold of yourself," she whispered under her breath. "Just because you're a 14-year-old girl doesn't mean you need to think like one. He just wants a walk, not marriage." Thankfully, before she could overanalyze the situation to death, Alex and Cornelius crossed into the dwarf forests. Didn't matter how old or powerful she became, the thick and dangerous woods of the dwarf forest always gave Alex the creeps. These woods were home to some of their worst memories and to some of the worst creatures that lived in the land of stories. She guided Cornelius up one of the only paved paths in the territory and followed a sign that pointed in the direction of the dwarf mines. Just before they reached the mines, a spacious clearing came into view. The clearing had been staged like an outdoor chapel. 24 logs had been positioned like benches, seats facing the front where a large boulder stood like a pulpit. Carved into the pulpit were the initials J and G, surrounded by a heart. "Go find some grass to eat, Cornelius," Alex said as she hopped off the unicorn. "I'll come to get you as soon as the wedding is over, but don't go too far. These woods aren't exactly unicorn-friendly." Cornelius trotted over to the side of the clearing while Alex looked for a place to sit. She was one of the first guests to arrive. A man with a thick, curly mustache and a heavy black cloak sat at the front near the pulpit. A witch who was missing her left arm and most of her teeth sat in the very back with a small troll that had gray skin and large horns. Sitting in the center of the makeshift chapel was a woman Alex could have picked out in any crowd. She was sitting alone, wearing a large fluffy red coat that covered most of her body. A tiny red hat with a matching feather was perched on top of her very stylish blonde hairdo, and she wore a pair of round glasses with red lenses in an attempt to conceal her identity. She glared at the people and creatures around her, anxious about being in their presence. "Red, it's so good to see you," Alex said and took a seat next to the covered queen. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Shh," Red said and pressed a finger against her mouth. "Keep your voice down. I don't want anyone to know who I am." Alex looked at her like she was joking. "You're trying to hide in that outfit?" "Well, forgive me, but I didn't know what the proper attire for a fugitive wedding in the woods," Red said and hid her face deeper in her coat. "I wouldn't be here except that Charlie talked me into it. Look at the characters around us. Where did Jack and Goldilocks meet these people? A child's nightmare?" "Where's Froggy?" Alex asked. She couldn't spot her formerly cursed friend anywhere in the clearing. "He's in the woods somewhere with Jack, waiting for the wedding to begin," Red said. "He's Jack's best man." "Oh, that's adorable," Alex said. "Who's Goldilocks' maid of honor?" Red gave an irritated snort she didn't mind the other guests hearing. Clearly, this was a sore subject. "The horses!" Alex had to bite her lip to keep from laughing. "I suppose that makes sense," Alex said. "She and Porridge have been through a lot together. You two, on the other hand, have always had a, how do I say this, teetering relationship?" "Yes, it's always been very give and take. I give and she takes," Red said. "But we made up once she gave me back the diamond necklace she stole from me. She thought it was just a joke. I thought it was an act punishable by death, blah, blah, blah. But we reconciled and here I am." "That's good news," Alex said. "So how are you doing, my dear? How's your grandmother and everyone in the fairy kingdom?" Red asked. "Shimmery as always, I imagine." Alex let out a long sigh. "Everyone is getting ready for the big fairy ball coming up. I'll officially be a part of the fairy council and the happily ever after assembly when it's over," Alex said. She hesitated to bring up the other major subject on her mind, but figured there weren't too many people in her life she could talk about it with. "And I sort of met a boy?" Red did a double take and yanked off her glasses. Her big blue eyes grew even bigger, and a crooked smile stretched across her face. "A boy?" Red said loudly. The topic, obviously, so exciting she couldn't be bothered to worry about disguising herself anymore. Tell me everything. Where did you meet him? How old is he? How tall? What class? What race? What species? Alex had difficulty remembering all the questions. He's the son of a farmer from the Eastern Kingdom. He's older and taller than me, and as far as I know, he's human. For now, Red said, trust me, being involved with someone who has been cursed to live on and off as a grotesque creature can put a strain on the relationship. But he sounds very promising. I love a good working class man. What's his name? Rook Robbins, Alex said, and she couldn't help but smile just mentioning his name. I can really tell you like this boy, Red said with a raised eyebrow. Alex sighed again as she felt the butterflies reappear in her core. I'm not sure I'm ready for all this, she confided. I just have so much on my mind these days, I'm not sure it's a good time to add a boy into the mix. I keep worrying that it may turn into something really special or really awful. To be honest, I'm not sure which one would be worse. Oh, Alex, you need to relax and just enjoy the moment, Red said. You only have a first love once. What's the worst that could happen? I could get my heart broken and take my aggression out by enslaving the world like the Enchantress did, Alex said matter-of-factly. That's a tad extreme, Red said, but you're nothing like her, so you have nothing to worry about. Who's to say I'm not? Alex said. This is the first time something like this has ever happened to me. If I'm not prepared enough going into it, I might be scarred for life. Red placed a hand on her shoulder and smiled warmly. The first cut is always the deepest, but not every cut leaves a scar, she said. If you spend your whole life worrying about getting hurt, then you aren't really living. You don't want to shield yourself so much from the bad stuff that nothing good gets to you either. Meeting up with a cute boy who likes you isn't going to hurt you. Thanks, Red. That's really insightful, Alex said, a little surprised Red had so much knowledge on the topic. Well, if there's one thing I know a lot about, it's first loves, Red said. Then again, when I was 14, I ruined 2 lives by trying to be with the boy I liked, so I'm not sure how good the advice I'm giving you is. There's a thin line between in love and insane, and I've crossed it many times. But looking back, had I not experienced all those awful things, I would have never met Charlie, so in the long run, it was all worth it. They smiled at each other. Red was probably the closest thing to a big sister Alex would ever have. Red had spent years of her life chasing after a boy she could never have, and yet here she was today, happily supporting him at his wedding to another woman. Red had come a very long way, and if Red could overcome heartbreak, Alex figured she could too. So, when do you see him next? Red asked. Tomorrow evening, Alex said. We're going for a walk. How adorable! I've always wondered what poor people do for their first dates, Red said. I insist you stop by my castle tomorrow before you see him. We can talk about boys and I can help you pick an outfit. Are you sure you wouldn't mind? Alex said. Aren't you busy being the queen of your own kingdom and all? Oh, no, I'm delighted, Red said. I just have this silly little meeting at the House of Progress, but you can come with me and we can chat during all the boring parts. What's the House of Progress? Alex asked. Surely she must have heard her incorrectly. Didn't I tell you? Red said. It's just like that place you were telling me about from your world, the one with all the representatives. Congress, Alex asked. Yes, that one, Red said happily. I decided to copy it. I have a representative from each neighborhood in the Red Riding Hood Kingdom help me make all my decisions. That way, every decision is a well-rounded one, and I won't be solely blamed for anything that goes wrong. But Congress sounded so dreary and bleak, I wanted my House of Representatives to sound promising and uplifting. I thought Queen Red Riding Hood's House of Progress had such a better ring to it. There was movement in the trees around them. They could hear several people approaching the clearing from different parts of the forest. Speaking of ring, I think the wedding is about to start, Alex said. Like clockwork, as the sun began to set in the horizon, the remaining wedding guests emerged from the trees around them. Each guest was shadier than the next. There was an ogre covered in yellow warts who took a seat in the front. He was followed by a woman who had bright red eyes who knew the witch in the back and sat beside her. A rugged dwarf led a blind dwarf with 2 eye patches to a seat near Alex and Red. A goblin couple with green scaled skin sat in the front of them. A woman covered in maroon robes sat close to Alex and Red. The only part of her body that was exposed was her beautiful green eyes. She seemed friendly enough, but like Red, Alex didn't want to make herself too known in this environment. Red looked to the sky and took a deep breath, trying to fight off the anxiety that the newcomers caused her. A loud swoosh made Alex jump as Mother Goose swooped down from the sky on Lester's back. They landed at the front of the clearing, and Mother Goose took her place behind the stone pulpit. She took a large swig from a flask she had hidden in her hat and cleared her throat before starting the ceremony. "Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and whatever the rest of you are," Mother Goose said. "We understand a lot of you are on a tight schedule due to being on the run from the law or have to try to eat or kill each other in the past. So we'll make this celebration as short and sweet as possible to avoid any discomfort. Let the wedding begin." The crowd cheered with an interesting combination of hoots, hollers, and growls. Jack and Charlie, the man forever known as Froggy to the twins, appeared from the trees behind the pulpit. They both wore sharp dress shirts and looked as handsome and charming as ever. Jack looked as anxious as Red about being there, but in a good way. A soft series of thumps came from the back of the clearing, and Alex turned to see a white and brown spotted foal walking down the aisle. He held a basket of rose petals in his mouth and was breathing very heavily, blowing the petals out of the basket and scattering them across the ground with every exhale. "That's adorable. Who is he?" Alex whispered to Red. "That's Porridge's new son," Red whispered back. "They call him Oats." Not too long after Oats reached the front of the clearing, his cream-colored mother trotted down the aisle behind him with a bouquet of daisies in her mouth. When she joined her son and the others by the pulpit, she quickly chewed up the flowers in her mouth and swallowed them. "Everyone, if you still have your legs, please stand for the bride," Mother Goose asked. The guests stood and turned back to the back of the clearing. Red stayed seated until Alex pulled her up to her feet. A flock of sparrows perched high in the trees began to sing a beautiful ballad as Goldilocks appeared. She was stunning. She wore a simple but elegant white lacy dress with a long train. She was barefoot, and her golden locks of hair flowed all the way down to her waist. Wildflowers had been wrapped around the handle of her sword, and she carried it down the aisle like a bouquet. It was beautiful but lethal, just like Goldilocks. Despite all the gruesome guests, no one could deny that the ceremony had turned out to be beautiful. Goldilocks arrived at the pulpit, and she and Jack faced Mother Goose with tears of joy in their eyes. "Well, sit down already," Mother Goose ordered the crowd. Once they obeyed, she continued officiating. "47 years ago, whoops, wrong speech, sorry. Dearly beloved, we are gathered God knows where today to celebrate the joining of these two wanted fugitives." Mother Goose turned to face Jack. "Jack, do you take Goldilocks, a woman charged with countless burglaries, breaking and entering and running from the law?" "Don't forget attempted murder," Red called towards the pulpit. "I wasn't going to," Mother Goose said. "And attempted murder to be your outfully wedded wife, in sickness and in health, in arrest and imprisonment, until death do you part." There's no question in Jack's mind. "I do," he said with the biggest smile he had ever been seen with. Mother Goose turned to Goldilocks. "Goldilocks, do you take this man, a national hero whose reputation you single-handedly ruined, to be your outfully wedded husband, in sickness and in health, and in rest and imprisonment, until death do you part?" Goldilocks had never looked so happy in her life. "I do," she said. "Well, in that case, let's get this thing over with," Mother Goose called out. "With the power semi-entrusted in me by the Happily Ever After Assembly, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the—" Before she could permit it, Jack and Goldilocks locked lips, and the crowd of guests cheered wildly. Once they were done kissing, they climbed astride Porridge and galloped back down the aisle and off into the sunset with Oats following closely behind. Mother Goose snapped her fingers, and a sign magically appeared over Porridge's back. It read, "Just Married." Watching the wedding had somehow made all of Alex's fears and doubts about taking a walk with Rook go away. She wanted to be just as happy as Jack and Goldilocks one day, and she didn't care how many emotional obstacles she'd have to go through to get there. "All right, now everyone get out of here before I've seen with any of you," Mother Goose said. "And to the ogre in the back, you still owe me 17 gold coins from our card game last week. I haven't forgotten." All the guests disappeared into the forest as quickly as they had appeared. Froggy joined Alex and Red in the center of the clearing and gave Alex an enormous hug. "Hello, Alex. It's always wonderful to see you," he said. "Lovely wedding, don't you think?" "It was beautiful," Alex said. "Don't you think it was beautiful, Red?" Red didn't respond. Her arms were crossed as if she was frowning in the direction Jack and Goldilocks had ridden off in. "Darling, what's wrong?" Froggy asked. "Didn't you enjoy the ceremony?" I did, Red said unconvincingly. Especially the dress, because it was mine. She stole it from me.